I didn't make the kids stupid. That's on the parents. That's on the government. Not me. No way. Buddy, I'm a teacher. And that's a respectable thing.
So, in today's video, and this video might be one of the most important ones that I think I've made, we're going to talk about paranoia, we're going to talk a little bit about intrigue, precautions, informants, federal agents. You know, I'm going to read to you an essay that my friend had sent me several days ago. It was written by a guy named Bill White, and I'd posted it to my Telegram group, encouraged people to read it because it has some very valuable knowledge from a guy who suffered from this very thing. And although I don't know how many people read it, I know one guy did, old boss Chad, but I'm going to take the time to read it to you. Now, I'm going to take a few minutes. This video is probably going to be pretty long. I thought about live streaming it, but I decided against it. I'll probably just set this as a premiere of sorts. There's a lot to go over. First off, I'm going to take a few minutes to address some e-drama and what I would consider a serious accusation that was hurled at me. I think it was last week. You know, I don't like engaging in e-drama. Don't care for it. It's completely pointless. What's the use of arguing with someone online? You know, I can understand disagreeing, you know, trying to get your point across, but I mean, when it just degrades to just wild insults and accusations, I have no time for that. I'm not interested, because it just pisses you off. And it's pointless. It ain't like you can go up and, you know, smack some sense into whoever it is you're arguing with. I ain't got time for that fucking shit. I don't got time for the e-drama, but I'm going to address this. There was a group that I was in on Telegram. It's the largest group I was in, and I joined it months ago. And it's a group that I didn't post in very often. Just because it was so big, you know, I didn't know a lot of the guys there. And, well, you know, every now and then I'd post something. I met a couple of guys in the group, you know, that I've conversated with, and I like them pretty good. But in that group, I was accused of being a Fed by a couple of guys, all because I show my face in my videos, and as my Telegram avatar I have a picture of me. Let me explain to you, and I mean this is a reason for concern that I have since found out. You know, I have to admit I'm pretty naive in a way about all of this online etiquette. But let me explain to you why I show my face. I have done this since I started making videos here on YouTube almost 2 years ago. This is how I've done it, and I ain't gonna stop now. The reason that I do it is because the people that have had the biggest influence on me doing this show their faces as well. They are Varg, Vegard Solheim, Stefan Svetkovich, I might be butchering that. Through Varg, I learned of all of these people. These people are pagans. You know, I found Varg. You know, I'm relative, and I wasn't around for Charlottesville or any of that. You know, I've always been racially aware. Growing up, 2016, me and my father watched a certain documentary that you can't find on many platforms now, that explained a lot of events that happened 100 to 80 years ago, and it answered a lot of the questions I always had had. But it wasn't until about 2018 I discovered Varg's channel here. And a lot of what he said, it's certainly had quite the impression upon my life, upon my thoughts, And I don't agree with every little thing that Varg says. I don't. Nor do I like how he treated some of his closest supporters there online, All the arguments and such, I didn't like that. But I do have to say, and I have to give the man credit. Through Varg, I discovered Vegard and Stephen, however you say his name. Also through Vegard, I discovered Apollonian Germ. Through Apollonian Germ, I discovered Didymus. These are people that I respect tremendously and think that are very intelligent, all of them, even though some of them have had their falling out and don't get along. And going back to Varg, he had never advocated for any political movement. There is no political solution. He never advocated for any of this, and I don't either. I've never been a part of any movement, and I don't know if I ever will, to be honest. But, let me get back. The reason I show my face is if I ever say something critical about Christianity, something harsh, I don't feel like being fucking called something that I'm not. I don't know how many times I've seen people say, oh, well, you're just a member, you are you-know-who-ish, because you don't fall in line with the whole Abrahamic thing. I didn't feel like being accused of this, because I don't like being called something I'm not. But me showing my face has gotten me called something that I'm not. I know in that exchange, I'm not going to lie. I was slightly pissed. I was pissed off about this, It's natural to be pissed off if you're accused of something that you're not. But in my exchange with these two guys in that group, I kept my cool. I spoke evenly and civilly to them. I do remember, he said something, well, you show your face and that's not really in a line with the movement. I didn't really care to elaborate so much. Didn't really care to explain myself to these people because, this is a fucking group online. And you know what? Yeah, I show my face, but I've never advocated for any movement. Does that mean, now I do advocate for getting out in your community and speaking to people. I've met a few of the guys that watch my videos. I had a great time doing so. And I think it's important to do these things. You got to be careful doing it. You got to use common sense. Don't do it if someone makes you uncomfortable. But I don't advocate for any political movement. I see so many of what you could call our guys advocating for this party or this movement or that, this or that. It's all just kind of dizzying in a way. Myself, I think it's a waste of fucking time. I don't think there is a political solution. Not in the least. Now, I know some of you are inclined to engage in political activism. Depends upon the kind of activism. One thing I think that is labeled political activism by some of these more prominent groups is just doing a bunch of fucking podcasts. Perhaps you could call it political activism, I don't know. I'm not going to waste my time with it. But I don't see any fucking sense in joining any organized group. It's pointless. Any formal organization, because how many times have we seen that this has just gotten people with good intentions? Perhaps some of them weren't all that bright. Perhaps some of them were a little naive. How many times have we seen them get entrapped? Because there are forces, there's federal agents and there's informants who are trying to entrap us. That narrative about there being a white supremacist domestic terrorism, they're trying to prop up that narrative. Now, yeah, I was pissed, and they kicked me out of their group, ran me off. That's fine, I have no hard feelings now. And after all, you were just looking out for your group, and I can respect that. Although, You are completely wrong, Wardy, and always above. But I can respect your actions. Another little bit of V-drama. This happened about a month ago, and it also pertains to the general subject of this video. I had to remove a guy from my little Telegram group. The guy is Zoltanus, however you say it. You know, I'd found out about Zoltanus several months ago when he did the debate with, I guess, that Martinez perspective guy, some e-celeb that don't really care for. Don't care about being an e-celeb. I don't want to fucking be an e-celeb. It's fucking gay. It's stupid. This ain't no fucking popularity contest. I'm just trying to give some advice to anyone who's willing to listen, and perhaps use it. But that Zoltanus guy, I listened to a little bit of that debate, and he caught my ear because he was mentioning a guy that I'd heard Didymus mention before. And like I said, I respect Didymus and consider him very intelligent. He was mentioning him in the debate, and I got in touch with him, and we started talking. I asked him, had he ever heard of Didymus? And he said he was going to have a stream with him upcoming soon, and I was very interested in this. And I will say this, Zoltanus, he is very well read in a lot of this subject matter. He's pretty intelligent about it. And that stream that he did with Didymus it's a podcast that I would consider it's very worthwhile to listen to. There's such a wealth of knowledge. They both did a very good job with it. Well, later, I just would watch some of his videos. I couldn't tell you what Zoltanus's ideology really is. He talks about so many different things. He's much more well-read on this, and he does have a point when he says that people are not very well-read on a lot of the ideologies that they proclaim to support, and he has a point about this. I'm not particularly well-read on a lot of certain ideologies, which I'm not really. Sometimes I'm just not much into the whole ideology thing. I just have my thoughts. I will read some books, but anyway, at some point he got into my group. I had set my group to private on Telegram. But there's some way that I've heard other people that have small groups on there say as well that sometimes people get in that they didn't invite. I didn't invite Zoltanus, but I didn't object about him being there. I thought what he was doing was really interesting. And we spoke to each other some. He had asked me to come on one of his future podcasts. We were going to talk about NS and paganism, which I know a little bit about. I know some about it. It was set, we never set a date for it, but it was going to be like so many weeks into the future, which I wanted because, I wanted to learn more about it. I wanted to prepare myself to, have something interesting to talk about. I know some things like the monument, the Saxonhain monument at Verdun. I made a video about it here. And there's some other subjects, some other interesting proofs, I think. But anyway, several days later, he made this comment about the Holodomor. So he made it sound like the Ukrainians and the people that suffered under it deserved it, pretty much. I did not agree with this, not in the least. And then it came out, that he had been banned for his comments that was in a private chat room, he thought, from like a year ago or so. I'm not sure. He admits to this himself. He was in the National. I'm not going to talk much about it. He was in the National Guard. He said something, he probably shouldn't have. But what he said in that private chat group was something that was on many people's minds at the time regarding the race riots that happened last summer. Well, he got reported for it, and he suffered for it. He suffered, got banned. And in this essay that I'm going to read you, Bill White mentions, and it's something that I've put into practice before I even knew of this essay, I don't call people feds. I don't call them informants. Because you know what? I don't fucking know. I don't know. I truly don't. But Zoltanus, after he had made those comments, I backed out of the interview. I broke off contact with him and I removed him from my group because some of the members of my group expressed concern, and since it's my group, I'm responsible for it. This isn't some formal fucking organization. This is just some Telegram bullshit. But since I'm responsible for it, I removed him. You know, have no ill will towards the guy. He slandered some guys that I like, but he spoke evenly about me. I don't know what he said in private. He probably cussed me in private, called me everything. I don't care. He didn't do it out in public. But you know, I removed him because, not because I'm saying he's a Fed or an informant. I've never called him that. I never will, because I don't fucking know. But what I will say is that I think it's undeniable that the guy has had some heat on him. It's undeniable. I mean, they know him, they know his name, everything. You know, I hope he's not some informant. I hope he's not some Fed, you know. I do. I want to try to give a person the benefit of the doubt, but like I said, I think he's just got too much heat on him. I'm not saying he's an informant. I'm just saying he's being watched. Whatever. But I don't advocate for any movements. And going back to Telegram, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'm starting to think that place is just fucking cancer to a degree. I've thought about shutting down my group, although I've weeded out some people, and most people there, they don't argue too much now, like they did a month or two ago. I'll keep it up, but I mean, I can't help it. I feel like it's just a lot of a waste of time. It's got its place. I probably wouldn't ever delete it completely, just because I do have some conversations with some people on there that I would like to be able to stay in touch with. But I don't like wasting too much fucking time on that shit, to be honest. And plus, they're starting to censor now. I deleted my old channel on there, started a new one, because the Google, the Android, and the Apple app started censoring people. It's just a fucking waste of time. It's starting to feel like to me, other than some personal conversations I've had with people. But I don't advocate for any movement, not in the least. Because what have they done other than entrap, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of young men who had good intentions, who got entrapped. Perhaps they weren't too bright, perhaps they were naive, I don't know. But I think it's an error, and see, what inspired me to make this video was a stream that Surviving Vimerica did a few days ago, talking about this very subject. In fact, he is the one who sent me the essay that I'm going to read to you here shortly, and I think it's very important, and that's why I'm going to read it and give you some thoughts in the meantime. But I mean, I do understand, you know, the whole paranoia thing, because it's out there. These people, they are out there. Certainly. But I'm not going to call anybody, I'm not going to accuse them of something when I don't fucking know. I'm just not going to do it. You know, I think right now the idea of any political movement is completely nonsensical. It's negative. It's just a net negative. I mean, really, how many of these does any of these movements actually do something to fucking help members of our race? Does any of them ever run a food drive to help impoverished white families? Does any of them do anything to address and to maybe help some of the recovering young addicts from all this opiate epidemic, this meth epidemic? Do any of them that advocate for these fucking movements, do they actually do anything? Now, I will say this, I know there's some guys that I speak to in my group and some others, they go to these Narcotics Anonymous meetings and they try to help these young addicts turn their life around. You know, I've been there. This is something that I really want to do here soon, because I've been there, I know how it is. And you look at the racial makeup of a lot of these people that are former addicts, a lot of them's white. Not all of them. I'm not selfish enough to say that this doesn't affect other races, because it does. But if you look at the racial makeup of a lot of the opiate deaths and all the other deaths attributed to drug use and drug addiction, a lot of them's white. And this is by design. It's not a coincidence. Not in the least. So I don't advocate for it. Not in the least. You know, I've said before, I kind of think the argument about individualism and collectivism is kind of silly. I see a lot of our guys talking about we need to collectivize this and that, which that's a noble cause. And I mean, you need a group to get things together. But I don't think you need a formal group, and I think any group that's advocating for political changes, of any group that's trying to reform this current absolutely rotten, corrupt, and despicable system that we have is a waste of time. It's a net negative. You know, and I mean, I lean, I guess you could say, possibly, you know, I'm not above helping people that need it, certainly. But I mean, I kind of lean more to being an individualist, because we all should look out for ourselves. That doesn't mean be selfish. That doesn't mean to turn your nose up at a brother or sister in need. But you should look out for number one. You should look out for yourself, because that's the only person that you can control. You can help and you can give advice, but at the end of the day, that's all you can do. And you know, I hear a lot of people talking about saving the white race. I've said it before, I'm not a white supremacist, because there's many of my own that are just complete fucking garbage. And they disgust me about more than anything else, because they enable this, they buy into it. I mean, you see the drag queen story hour shit. Most of the toddlers there and the parents just sitting there with their fluoride smiles on their face as their children are being groomed. They're mostly white. They're mostly white. These people are not my brothers. They're not my sisters. They're child abusers, and they don't deserve the wonderful chance that they've been given. I'm not about saving the white race. I only care about the remnant. If you're watching this, you're in that remnant, I would believe. And I would like to help you, although I know we're separated by hundreds, if not thousands of miles. I'm not about saving the white race. Most of us are complacent, just ignorant, brainwashed, hopeless. I'm not about red pilling the normies. If you ain't got an idea of what's going on by now, you're not paying attention, and if you're not paying attention, you may not be that bright. Some people's into it. If you're into it, by all means, carry on, but I'm not here doing that. I'm not going to waste time on it anymore. So I don't advocate for any movement. Just be a good person. Do the right thing. Help your brothers and your sisters if you can. But you got to look out for yourself. And you know, a lot of these movements, I mean, look at James Fields. He's rotting away in prison right now. And you know, a lot of these movements, like Richard Spencer and, what was his name, Raza Giorgiani, these are the two guys that are credited with founding the alt-right. That's a term I don't even like, don't even care for it, it's completely stupid. These people, I'm not going to call them feds, but they have very strange connections. Apollonian Germ did 2 excellent videos about each of these guys. You know, I wasn't around when they were at their peak popularity, I guess you could say, but I mean, Giorgiani is on video numerous times saying that he was that they wanted to steer this movement away from white nationalism. I know in that several months ago when that Zoltanus did an interview with Richard Spencer, I watched it. Richard is well spoken, but I mean, I just can't get over the fact that I think he's a plant. And I mean, he said something, he understood, he sees the limits of racism or racialism, and you know, it's always, these people were there to de-radicalize or whatever. You know, you could call me a white nationalist. I agree with many of the points that they make. I believe that we are entitled to our own homelands, that we should be the supermajority in our homelands and the lands that we built, the nations we built. But I mean, honestly, I'm not so much even a nationalist. I'm more of a tribalist, because I'm focused on a smaller group. You ever heard of Dunbar's number? I made a video about it here. I'm more of a tribalist. I think our minds are, we are geared to work as tribes. Tribes of about 250 to maybe 400 people. This is how we evolved. And I think nation states are easily subverted. Any huge group is subverted. It's easy to subvert and infiltrate and subvert. You know, and I don't, like I said, I hate to repeat myself, I don't advocate for any group, any formal group, not in the least. So now, it's hotter than hell. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to read you this very important essay. So, now to the main point of this video. I'm going to read to you Bill White's essay on informants and informers. Now, Bill White, he is, I believe, currently in prison. The case that his whole case is very convoluted. They tried to stick a bunch of charges. He had I believe he had a website, and the FBI or the government, they believed that the people that viewed his website, that followed him, were violent, extremely violent people. And, you know, they charged him with a variety of things. And Bill White is a man, I think he had some mental illness issues. They tried to put him on, they threw all these charges at him, and they realized, none of them would stick. I can't recall right off. I don't know a lot about this guy, but I do know, I believe his essay here is very important. And I think he went to Mexico. He was released, he was paroled and released a short time after, his trial. And I think from what I understand, the people that released him, they knew that he was, he had mental issues. They knew that he would probably screw up and they could lock him up for good. He got 30 years for his parole violation. He went to Mexico. He fled to Mexico for some reason. But his essay here is very important, and I'm going to read it to you now. The gist of it: fringe political movements destroy their best candidates at the urging of informants, who then replace useful but flawed people with useless informants who chant the ideology louder than anyone else. Now, like I said earlier, I don't advocate for any political group currently. I think it's silly to join a group that is organized, that is a formal group. You're just asking to be infiltrated. You're asking to be influenced. I'm not about that. Not me. No way. And I know some people watching this will be like, oh, well, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I am not going to get entrapped. No, not me. No way. It's not going to happen. Because, like I said earlier, I think it's important for us to, get out in the community. Do things in real life. And, this online thing, it has its place. And it's a good way to network. But, you really never know who you're speaking to. And, if you agree to meet with someone, which I think is an important and a good thing to do, but like I said, use common sense. Let's see. But I'm not about joining a group. There's no political solution. It's false hope, as I see it. There would have to be some sort of collapse, most likely an economic collapse. This economic collapse would have to be very severe, I think, before any sort of political solution could present itself. And this collapse, things are going to get helter-skelter, for lack of a better word. And, this sort of economic collapse, it would dwarf, what we experienced back in 07, 08.
things would have to get pretty bad. So I see no sense in risking this. Why put yourself out there and be, risk? Because, really, what good are you doing your people, your family, your friends, your community, if you're fucking locked up? The best way to win, in my opinion, is to just not play the game. Truly. Alright. How federal informants work. There was once a time when a group of people could get together, shout "informant" in unison, and slander the reputation of a political activist. With the emergence of the internet and the easy availability of government records, it has become easy for any person to quickly determine whether someone has rendered substantial assistance to the government. Here, I will explain how federal informants work and how one can access information on them. I also urge people to stop treating this subject so lightly, rehabilitating actual dangerous informants while using the term informant as a smear. Snitch culture. The U.S. Department of Justice employs about 10,000 FBI field agents. FBI regulations require each agent to employ at least 4 confidential informants and suggest 10 as an appropriate mean. This means that approximately 100,000 Americans work as informants for the FBI. When America's other 32 law enforcement agencies are considered, this could be the DEA, what else is there? The ATF, all of that. When America's other 32 law enforcement agencies are considered, between 600,000 and 12 million Americans. That's a pretty broad number. We don't know. This is just his estimate. Perhaps 1 out of every 200 adults works full-time for the federal government, reporting on other Americans. Now, if this metric that Mr. White proposes is correct, 1 out of every 200 adults. This YouTube channel of mine, I'm right around 1,250 subscribers. If I go by this metric, there is 6.25 informants that watch my videos. We'll just round it down to 6. 6 of you motherfuckers are informants. It could be more, could be less. I have no idea of knowing necessarily who watches these videos, I guess it's one of the risks of putting yourself out there. But anyway, where was we? Alright, informants are paid approximately $400 a week for their services. Thus, this profession tends to attract those for whom $1,730 a month, which translates to $20,800 a year, is a substantial incentive. People who are mentally ill or otherwise living on disability and welfare benefits, or people laboring at the lower echelons of drug organizations tend to be particular recruitment targets, as are those who are otherwise unemployed. Informants also receive a bonus for convicting others. Generally, they receive $100 for every year of sentence a victim receives. 20 years is a $2,000 bonus, for instance. Let me scroll down here. The method of the informant is usually the instigation of inchoate crimes. I'm honestly not sure what that word means. The federal government may convict any 2 people who agree to commit a crime, one of whom has taken an act in furtherance of conspiracy. There are few restrictions. The government must show a propensity towards the crime. Being previously convicted of drug dealing is enough to allow an informant to target someone with a drug conspiracy. Speaking out angrily is enough to justify trying to involve someone in an act of terrorism. The only rule is that the informant cannot be one of the 2 required people. like I said earlier, when I was younger, I had, drug problems and stuff. The conspiracy of methamphetamine, this was a way that they would pick up a lot of people back home. It's a tool that the legal system, they employ these informants. They do this, And these informants that he mentions, it's not just, in these circles, it's a broad array. There's drug informants, there's various criminal informants. But anyway, in cases where the government cannot put two people together, they often try to invite a solicitation. This is how Matt Hale was framed. The government will infiltrate someone into an organization they believe is committing crimes and try to involve them as security or as a soldier. This person will let the group leader know he is available to commit a crime and will wait to be solicited. In the case of the blind sheik, and Matt Hale, the informant may say he is going to commit a crime and ask for the leader's blessing. The government targets these inchoate crimes because they are easier to prosecute than actual crimes. The FBI, for instance, has manuals, playbooks of how crimes are to be put together. For instance, in an interstate murder for hire, the informant is instructed to tell the target that their code word will be to paint the house. This is one way we know the alleged Iranian plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador is a fraud. A few years ago, several white revolution members were drawn into a plot to rob drug dealers. Stealing and selling fake drugs by robbing a stash house is another standard federal script. Below the level of investigating crimes, federal informants also monitor political and media organizations and shape public discourse. Let's see, many newspaper reporters are on the federal payroll and have a less formal relationship with federal law enforcement. This channel prevents negative coverage of federal cases and allows journalistic information to be funneled to U.S. attorneys. Within organizations, deeper cover informants identify targets and help shape discourse, promoting other informants to leadership positions and doing federal dirty work. It just goes talking about these federal informants that shape discourse. Kind of makes me think of, what the term a gatekeeper is. Some of these people that have a huge amount of influence online or whatever. Some of them, I do not doubt, that are gatekeepers. They shape discourse. They use misdirection. They do a variety of things. I think of, like I said, I can't say that, Richard Spencer or that Giorgiani guy's, federal, but I've got my suspicions. They're heavy suspicions. They promote discourse. They, a lot of these movements are subverted from the very top. They're meant to make people focus, to lose focus on what really matters. And they're meant to, in some cases, to just encourage people to do just outlandish things. And this is one thing, I would never form a group of my own, because it is, even if you have the purest of intentions, your group gets popular enough, you will be infiltrated. I don't care how fucking good you think your OPSEC or whatever is, your vetting process. It doesn't matter how good it is. You will be infiltrated. You certainly will. I'm just not into that. I'm not me, no way. Some examples of informants. MP is a mentally ill man in Indiana. He became involved in an anti-immigrant organizing group. He has written he meets monthly at McDonald's with Indiana State Police and the FBI to discuss the white movement. He is not paid, though he would be if he was smart enough to ask. He's an informant. In the future, if the government decides he is suitable for a leadership role, others will be told to go on white message boards and support him. He may be asked from time to time to speak well or speak badly of other white activists. MP may not even realize he is being manipulated, but he is being used. Another example, HT. Let me get a drink of water here. Alright. HT ran a radio show on FM radio in New York and on the internet. On his radio show, he would call for violence against blacks, Mexicans, and federal officials. When a listener would respond, HT would turn them over to the feds, often for further investigation. His show was a honeypot. Let's see. Violent skinhead groups were a concern to the feds. One day, a group called VSC was formed. This group declared war on all other skinheads. Then they declared they were not racist. They would attack other white organizations, beat, stab, or set on fire white activists, and claimed nothing could happen in Indiana without their permission. Every once in a while, a few of their worst members would be arrested and sent to prison. This group is a false front. It was organized by federal informants as a honeypot for violent thugs, but its violence was used by the feds to suppress and control non-violent white organizations. Thus, in addition to social control, physical violence is used to control and suppress political dissent. MR joined the Imperial Knights of the KKK. He used a fake name, calling himself JR because he knew no one would check. One day, he was asked to distribute literature by the Klan boss at a county fair. While there, he incited 2 Klansmen he was with to attack a Filipino youth. The incident was widely reported as a hate crime, and the 2 Klansmen were convicted while the Klan was bankrupted. The media and the feds made claims about a hate crime, and MR, who manufactured the crime, moved on to another organization. BH was a deep cover federal informant. He did office work for DD, a prominent white politician, for years. Then he joined a major Nazi group. He agitated against the legitimate members and worked his way to chief security. His major role was reviewing membership applications. He was only revealed when the FBI fired him. These examples show FBI priorities: monitoring groups for future targets, establishing media to shape political opinion, establishing groups to use violence to suppress political dissent, inciting hate crimes, legal terrorism for political purposes, and placing members in leadership positions to guide and monitor organizations. Also note what the FBI did not do and never does. They did not establish any legitimate business or organizations or attempt to involve anyone in legal activities. They did not foster charity or attempt to build anything to help other people. And they never made an effort to legitimately influence the political process through elections, which I think that's they're not going to legitimately influence like I said, the political process completely broken in this country, most all Western nations. The FBI always tries to disrupt or control legitimate political and business activity. Their informers are usually, but not always, ignorant people without marketable skills. People with professional skills and family ties rarely take the risk of involvement in spying on others. They are too focused on their own advancement. My experience is that FBI agents always portray a Jewish caricature of the movements they infiltrate as well. They may play the skinhead thug. Rarely will they play the new right intellectual. This has been changing lately, though. The FBI has made efforts to recruit smart people, but without so much success. The average informant believes in nothing. People with beliefs are harder to flip. Prison snitches. So far we have talked about informants in the civilian world. Now we examine informants in the federal justice system. The federal justice system is structured to reward informants and guilty pleas. A person pleading guilty in the federal system has their sentence reduced by about 8%. Let's see. If they accept responsibility, Perhaps by cooperating, their sentence is reduced by 1/3 if they receive what is called an SKI reduction. For substantial assistance, their sentence is reduced by 50%. They may also receive a safety valve, voiding a mandatory minimum sentence. The easiest way to see if a federal inmate provided pretrial cooperation is to look at their sentence. If their sentence is not within sentencing guidelines, all federal sentences are controlled by federal sentencing guidelines. Find out why. If they received or asked for an SKI reduction, they cooperated. After sentencing, an inmate may continue to cooperate. An inmate who provides substantial cooperation after sentencing receives a Rule 35. A Rule 35 is a post-conviction sentence reduction for cooperation. To determine if someone received these things, use PACER. PACER.gov is the U.S. federal court website. All documents filed in federal court are available here. They may be under seal, but the type of document will be described. So you may not be able to read the Rule 35, but you can see if it was filed. Further, unsealed pleadings often reference sealed pleadings or discuss the background of a case. You can be 100% assured that if a person cooperates on a federal case, you can pull their PACER file and discover evidence of their cooperation. Hearing transcripts are public documents, as are pleadings. Anyone can look these things up. The danger of federal informants. The federal government arrests and tortures people for political reasons. To justify its policies, it needs a steady stream of terrorism and hate crimes. Because there is very little real terrorism and few actual hate crimes, the federal government manufactures both. The people it targets are often vulnerable and ignorant. They are angry people too stupid sometimes to understand they are breaking the law, or too disabled, often by addiction or mental illness, to say no. The FBI does not hesitate to coax someone up, drive them to the U.S. Capitol, hand them a bomb, and tell them to shout Al-Qaeda, and then use this to justify everything from anti-Islamic repression to aggression overseas. Similarly, they didn't hesitate to give McVeigh and Nichols detonators and then use Oklahoma City to justify gun control and acts against domestic extremism. The FBI's security actions are a real threat to legitimate and legal political activism. Because this is a serious issue, treating it like a funny gossiping game is inappropriate. Real federal informants are never rehabilitated. The feds will continue to approach them 20 or 30 years after the fact. Fake allegations of informing trivialize a serious issue. I mentioned this earlier. The federal government is the party who most wants informants rehabilitated and honest activists smeared. Game players play into federal goals. Because this is a serious issue, serious evidence should be required. Because our societal institutions are dishonest, all evidence must be treated skeptically. However, not all government documents are false, nor are all media reports. Evidence begins with an individual's own statements. Individuals cooperating with the FBI usually know to keep their cooperation secret, but some don't. MP, who we mentioned earlier, has openly discussed his regular meetings with law enforcement. In my case, an individual, VB, openly went on message boards discussing information he provided on me to the federal government. When others discuss meetings with the FBI, it should cause some concern. Not everyone visited by the FBI is guilty of cooperating, but the best way to approach an FBI visit is to say, "I'm represented by counsel," to give the name of an attorney you know and refuse to speak without any counsel present. Any other response is unwise. The real danger, though, comes from paid informants pushing the FBI agenda. It is hard to tell these types apart from honest weirdos sometimes. Certain behaviors, though, are suspicious. One is making allegations about others without specifics or evidence. When evidence is presented, truth can be discerned. When an individual will not make a specific, disprovable allegation and is not open to reason, they are suspicious. For instance, I sat in KS's trial. I watched a 9-year-old girl and her mother testify KS was hiding in the bushes outside the girl's school and saw the receipt for the pink Angora sweater KS sent her. And I've seen Stanley Kubrick's Lolita, and I know what that sweater means. I saw the photos of Lamb and Lynx Gade photoshopped onto lesbian porn. I know KS is a pedophile. Those are specific allegations. I give details of what I know, how I know, and why I believe as I do. Someone else could get the court record and disprove it. No one does because it's true. Compare that to all the world's other allegations. I learned over the years not to say something unless I have reason to believe it's true, and to withdraw it and apologize if I'm wrong. For instance, I have been reasonably told Jared Taylor's wife, Evelyn Rich, is not Jewish, and received a good explanation of how the ADL misused a paper she wrote. I have apologized for this allegation. I still dislike Taylor's politics, but I withdraw my ad hominem as incorrect. Let's see. Evidence continues with first-person accounts. First-person accounts may be wrong. They are not often objective. They should be investigated and substantiated. For instance, I disliked KS before his arrest for child porn. My first-hand account should be corroborated. Other white activists should have attended his trial. However, there are media accounts and there are court records. There is also KS's guilty plea. First-person accounts should be considered a jumping-off point for further investigation. We should ask for details and investigate why someone believes something, then gather evidence. The FBI opened a terrorism enterprise investigation into me in 2007 because a police detective in 1996 said I had been involved in an arson. An FBI investigation into the arson concluded there was no evidence. The agent who used the report took the allegation without the investigation report to justify getting me within FBI rules. White activists often do the same thing, take one allegation without investigation and assert it as true. In most cases, there are documents and records to justify or deny an allegation. I have made myself a promise never to again accuse someone of anything without reasonable proof. This is why I seek documents and witnesses. I didn't accuse HT of involvement in my case until he was alleged to have said at his trial he accused me of plotting to assassinate Obama with a truck bomb. I then obtained his trial transcript and read the evidence presented. Later, a report on his statements was released to my trial counsel in Chicago. Similarly, I attended KS's trial to find the truth. In contrast, at one point, an effort was made to persuade me DJ and PA were informants. At first, I wrongfully believed this. Later, I read the FBI reports and determined they were not informants. I heard PA testify at trial. I have publicly apologized to DJ. There was an allegation, I jumped to conclusions without proof, and I retracted and apologized. There are many people I dislike in the white movement. HS is one example. HS once argued KS was okay because a sexual interest in preteen girls was normal. I disagree. HS often makes a point of calling me names on message boards or making false allegations. I suspect HS is a pedophile, and so I often mention his professed interest in little girls. I do not call HS a Jew or an informant. He denies he made these statements. I direct people to the archives and I block him. This is an appropriate way to deal with bizarrety. So, allegations without evidence have to stop, as do efforts to deny or obfuscate evidence. Certain characters, decade after decade, seek to return to the movement by tearing down those who know the truth about them. All one can do is repeat the truth and move on. The so what factor. There is also a question of, if an allegation is true, so what? Informants are dangerous because they often lie to manufacture crimes, and the FBI's internal files are like an internet message board where the accused can not only respond, but can be jailed and tortured based on rumor. However, there is the so what factor. For example, GJ is homosexual. He is also a very intelligent guy who has produced a lot of good white material and who gets Savitri Deve and tradition. He has also launched a successful and needed publishing operation. Should he be driven out of the white movement? My thought on this was no, until GJ stole money and the membership list of CMS and then blackmailed them into not complaining. He then moved on to try to scam money from a friend of mine, and I discovered he had scammed others. This made me think he was not acceptable for the white movement. My question is this: homosexuality is a sign of mental disorder. Homosexuals, like other mentally ill people, are often less honest than other people. Thus, should homosexuality be seen as a warning sign for theft? Should we exclude homosexuals altogether, even when they are discreet about it, as GJ is? Usually this is not a question. White nationalism attracts a large number of homosexual men and extreme S&M fetishists. Usually these characters are very extreme and very forthright. Many uniformed National Socialist marches are, for many, a species of gay pride parade. People who cannot keep extreme sexual perversions, homosexuality, urine and feces obsessions, extreme brutality, quiet should not be in white organizations. People who are keeping them quiet should not be in public roles. In contrast, AP ran a prominent white record company. His project was successful in contributing to the white movement, but he was a little swarthy. One day, a Jewish homosexual group exposed the fact that his birth certificate said he was half mestizo. The white movement ran the guy out. This was wrong. We should have said, so what? We know that 22,000 genes, 2% of our DNA, is primarily responsible for our physical development. There are an average of 2,200 points of difference between whites and blacks. There are an average of 900 points of difference between whites and yellows or browns. If AP was half mestizo, merely being mestizo means at least half white and half American indigenous. He should have been about 225 points of difference within an average white, less than someone who was 1/8 black. He is approaching the normal range of variation between white ethnicities and individuals. Given the contribution, did the vice overwhelm it? True National Socialists are attracted to National Socialism because they seek goodness in a corrupt world. Many become too enthused or become too obsessed with moral purity. I've been in this category. When one strives for virtue, it is easy to reject flawed mankind. However, our excessive surface purity and our movement's inner corruption has paralyzed white activism. Thus, in addition to demanding evidence, the white movement needs to start asking, so what? DD is a womanizer, but an amazing organizer, writer, and speaker. So we ask ourselves, does the womanizing matter? RP, on the other hand, is a coward. He publicly disavows us, but holds public office and furthers our goals. Should he be shunned for that? These are difficult questions, but they belong in a broader discussion of baseless allegations. In addition to demanding evidence, we have also to ask, if true, do these allegations matter? Are they within an acceptable range of human error and fallibility, given what needs to be done? His conclusions. I reduced names here to initials to avoid attacking anyone. Perhaps a publisher will want to use fake names. The names in this context do not matter. I am no longer involved in white political activity. If the white movement wants to destroy itself, insofar as further destruction is possible, that's its business. But I believe in the vision of a certain Austrian artist in a beautiful, orderly world that promotes life and human happiness, and I am saddened to see the same old predominates as the world dies. What should be a beautiful celebration of love has been polluted and turned into a celebration of degeneracy and hate. The FBI directs white activism into criminal activity, and Jewish groups direct white power parodies into white ranks. Many of the most cynical have abandoned NS ideals to support the new right-wing Zionism, and many others seem to be talking just to earn their government check. I urge people to set fantasy aside and to focus on evidence, on reality, and on what can be demonstrated. There are many resources available to us to sustain the gossip and rumor-backed communities of 20 years ago. These efforts, often sponsored by people trying to harm white people, ultimately lead nowhere. So,